The defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes, lost 17 players to the NFL. 14 were drafted, three undrafted free agents. So they have a lot of starting production to replace in 2025. Starting off, going to be the most important position is the quarterback. Still unknown who the starter will be between Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. Right now, I believe that Sayin is going to end up winning the job, but it is an ongoing quarterback competition. We likely will not know until a few weeks into fall camp. And that's going to be a big factor that plays into their first game at home against Texas. This is going to be a really difficult way to start out the season. Arch Manning taking over as Texas's starting quarterback for his first full season. Buckeyes have the home field advantage here, which will help, but this is really as 50-50 as it gets.
This is a tough game to predict because, like you said, there's so many unknowns with this Ohio State team. Even though we've seen it season after season, despite however many people they lose to the NFL or to the transfer portal, they always come back just as strong. But after a national championship and losing your offensive and defensive coordinators, this is probably the biggest loss that Ohio State has had going from one season to the next. Despite that, I think that they will not lose this home opener. After winning the national championship, playing against a team they beat on their run, and having the home field advantage behind them, something is telling me that they get the job done at the shoe to kick off this incredible 2025 season.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really, really good game, and no doubt that this one comes down to the wire. But I think that truly this is such an even matchup of teams, talent-wise and everything else, that likely home field advantage actually will be able to play a big factor into this game and will, in my opinion, end up being the difference. That's really the only reason we're going Ohio State. If this was at Texas, I think this would be Longhorns in that scenario.
Yeah, without a doubt. It's just gonna depend on what happens on game day. So we'll see.
Speaking of game day, it will be Lee Corso's final ever appearance on College Game Day, which means this might be it already is one of the most anticipated games, but I cannot even imagine how many people are going to be trying to cram their way into Columbus for this one.
Especially with Lee Corso having the opportunity to pick his first love one last time. But coming after that game, they will have two games in the shoe against Grambling and Ohio. Both these games, Ohio State is going to be the better team. They outclass both teams by quite a large margin, even though Ohio has been one of the better MAC teams the past few years, especially last year. They are losing a lot of their starting production, including their starting quarterback from last year. So I don't think Ohio will give them much of a scare here. Also, it's been several years, maybe several decades, since Ohio State has lost a football game to a team from Ohio.
Not just a few decades, it's been over a century. 1921 against now Division III Oberlin College was the last loss. So the odds are certainly against the Bobcats in this one. After their first bye week, Ohio State will be going on the road to face Demond Williams and Washington. This is going to be a really good game, I think. Most people are probably overlooking this one because Washington wasn't that great in 2024. But I think this is a really young team that learned a lot. And I think that they have the potential to maybe pull off a shocking upset here. They have a really strong home field advantage for a stadium that only seats around 50,000 people. The way that the covering over the end zone reflects the sound down really emphasizes just how loud this stadium is and makes it incredibly difficult for opposing teams to play in, very similar to what Oregon does down at Autzen Stadium. Aside from that, I think this is a really good Washington team. And if Ohio State overlooks them, like I think a lot of their fans are, this could turn out to be a serious upset potential game for Ohio State.
Yeah, without a doubt. Damon Williams, after a freshman season, saw him relieve Will Rogers a couple times and play great. He's looking to break out. The running game is going to be deadly once again. And yeah, like you were saying, Washington was 6-7 last year. That's including their bowl game loss. They played 11 regular season games that were either a home game or an away game. They were 0-5 on the road, but 6-0 at home. They did not lose a single game at home last year, despite that mediocre record. And we saw Ohio State loss at Autzen Stadium. That's another tough road trip. Granted, that Oregon team last year was completely different than what Washington's going to be this year. But those tough road trips going all the way from the Midwest out to the Pacific Coast are something different. So I'm definitely having this game on my radar. I'm an Ohio State fan, I am really worried about this game because, like you said, there is serious upset potential. This is a very dangerous game on the schedule. That being said, I do think, given Washington's youth, despite that maybe being an athletic advantage, I think that's going to lose a little bit in the experience department. So I do think Ohio State's going to be able to get the job done this time on the Pacific Coast.
Yeah, it really, I think, will be a close game, though. A lot closer than a lot of people are expecting. The next game back at home to face the Minnesota Golden Gophers. This one also has some sneaky potential. Minnesota, a team that we're decently high on. I think the Golden Gophers are going to be pretty solid in 2025. They'll have a redshirt freshman at quarterback, Drake Lindsey. And I think that his youth, especially on the road, is going to play into this percentage for Minnesota. We have it about 90% for Ohio State to win. I think there's a tiny chance the Gophers pull it off, but realistically, this is going to be an Ohio State win.
Yeah, even with Darius Taylor returning after a very great season, the starting running back for the Golden Gophers, I really don't think with who Minnesota's losing on the offensive line is going to help them succeed. I think Ohio State will be able to contain Taylor, and defensively, I don't really think Minnesota will be able to keep up with the Ohio State offense. Stopping Jeremiah Smith, as we saw last year, is very hard to do. You have to send three guys at him, and then that opens up the passing game for everyone else. So even though this Minnesota team is looking like they will be pretty good in 2025, I don't think they will be able to compete with the Buckeyes. Then after that, they go on the road to Memorial Stadium to face the Illinois Fighting Illini. A lot of people are very high on this Illinois team, calling them the next Indiana, with Luke Altmaier returning after a incredible season last year that saw them get a bowl win over South Carolina. This Illinois team has everything pointed in the right direction for yet another great season to maybe look at competing for a Big Ten title. I just don't think they have a chance in the Ohio State game. I think they benefited from a pretty easy schedule last year. They did have to play Michigan and did beat them pretty soundly. And if you want to look at it, Michigan did end up beating Ohio State, but I do think for this one, Ohio State is still just going to be the better team. It's not that big of a road trip. Illinois' home field advantage is okay, but I do think that Ohio State travels pretty well, and we've seen it. Ryan Day doesn't lose Big Ten games outside of Michigan.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty solid game still. Kind of like Connor was saying, Luke Altmaier, he's an experienced quarterback, and I think he's going to give Illinois a good shot in this game. But the Buckeye defense in the end will be the difference, and Ohio State should be able to pull out a win on the road. Heading into their seventh matchup of the season, another road game, this time at Wisconsin. The Badgers have one of the most brutal schedules in all of the Big Ten. I think that they're already going to be off to a pretty rough start to the season at this point, and momentum is going to play a factor into this percentage as well, which is why we have it all the way up at 90. Um, just I don't really see Wisconsin being able to win this game. It's going to be a rough season for the Badgers.
Yeah, even though Camp Randall is such a hard place to play in, even though we saw Wisconsin compete with Oregon last season when they hosted the Ducks, I really, like you said, I really don't think this is gonna be a matchup they can win. Momentum is going in opposite direction. So Ohio State is going to be 6-0 in our prediction at this point. Wisconsin's probably going to have maybe two wins at this point, and that's going to be easy non-conference wins. So I think momentum, like you said, is going to play a key factor here. After that second bye week, though, probably the second most anticipated matchup or the most anticipated matchup, depending on how you look at it, is going to be hosting Penn State. Biggest storyline here, Jim Knowles left Ohio State after winning a national championship to take the same position with James Franklin at Penn State. And Penn State already has a really good defense, and now the ceiling has just been raised. They also have Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, and Katron Allen all returning in the backfield, along with attacking the transfer portal, getting Syracuse wide receiver Trevor Pena. And if Drew Aller can really just unlock his full potential, like we saw him start to do last season and lead Penn State to yet another great season, this could really be a really tough game to predict. However, Ohio State doesn't lose to Penn State, especially in the shoe. A 65% does seem a little bit high for this game, considering we gave Texas a 50% chance. But I truly think that Ohio State is going to be able to get the job done at this point, despite whatever Penn State has.
Yeah, I kind of think it's similar to how Ohio State has been with Michigan the past few years, where it just seems like no matter what they do, whether they have a more talented team or not, they just haven't been able to beat them. Penn State has been that way with Ohio State ever since they pulled off that remarkable double overtime win back in 2016. They've had the lead late in the fourth quarter multiple times, and every single time they somehow find a way to lose. I don't know if it's James Franklin. I don't know if it's going to be Drew Aller this time, as we've seen him struggle, especially in late game positions. Maybe this is the year that they finally are able to break through, but I'm willing to bet on Ohio State to win this game much more than Penn State at this point. The next game doesn't really need much talking about. A road trip to Purdue, the bottom feeder of the Big Ten last season, going to be right back there this year. Even though it's a road trip, really nothing to worry about for Ohio State in this one, as they go back home for two more games, UCLA and Rutgers. Both of these are going to be pretty easy as well. I think Nico Iamaleava for UCLA will be making a return to the shoe after getting absolutely destroyed in the playoff first round, where he had his helmet cracked in that game. I think he's going to be seeing ghosts in this one, and I don't really think UCLA has much of a chance here either. Same thing for Rutgers. The Scarlet Knights are just not nearly as talented as Ohio State. So all three of those should be pretty easy wins for the Buckeyes.
And then they call it the game on the road to the big house in Ann Arbor to face the Michigan Wolverines to hopefully avoid losing five straight to Michigan. Words cannot describe how much this game means to both of these teams. Michigan going for even more pride, really just sinking their teeth into the wound of the Ohio State fan base, the Ohio State program, and Ohio State really looking to avenge these last 4 years when they've been so close so many times. I don't know which way to lean. You go with momentum, you go with history, and something says Michigan's going to pull it off, especially with the home field advantage of the big house. And then you got the other side, Ohio State's coming off a national championship. Ryan Day finally realizes that, hey, I can't beat them at their own game. I have to play my own game. And he's just going to throw bombs to Jeremiah Smith because no one can cover him because he's the best wide receiver in college football. It really can go either way. It's a rivalry game. It's 50-50, regardless of the talent. I really think this is the year that Ohio State is able to rebound. I don't know what it is. It's kind of like the Texas game. It could go either way. See how the season plays out, but something is telling me that this is finally going to be the chance for Ryan Day to beat the allegations and beat Michigan.
Yeah, I agree with you there. You hit pretty much every point there is. However, I do want to just briefly touch on the sign stealing scandal, as the NCAA is going to issue a ruling supposedly in June, which could greatly affect the percentage for this game, which we currently have at 50%, but as well as our predictions for Michigan's season as well. There's a good chance we're going to end up doing a video on that once it all comes out. But all of the reports that I've been reading highly suggest that there's a good chance of Sharon Moore being fired, as well as some significant punishments from Michigan, which lead me to wonder if maybe they'll have players transfer out. I just think that Michigan has a lot of unknowns going into next year regarding this science stealing scandal. And with how much it's starting to be talked about now, it's really tough to say anything that could potentially happen. But it just makes me a little bit more confident that Ohio State will be able to win this game in the end. Our way too early prediction for the Buckeyes was 10-2 with 9.75 projected wins. That projection went up by just a tiny bit to 9.8 wins with 7.3 Big Ten wins. Now, our official prediction is undefeated. Ohio State, one of very few teams that I think has the talent and the ability to go undefeated in 2025. That number is growing smaller by the year as we see more and more parity come into the sport through the transfer portal. The floor for the Buckeyes, I think, is 9-3. The losses being Texas, Penn State, and either Washington or Michigan. I don't think they'll lose all four of those. 9-3 would be the floor there. And then the ceiling, obviously, we predicted it undefeated for Ohio State.
This season really just depends on the quarterback play. If Julian Saint's able to step in and lead this team very easily, then yeah, 12-0 is definitely not out of the question. I think also the very first game of the season against Texas is going to be the tone setter. If Ohio State wins that game, then, well, obviously undefeated is in their future because they didn't lose that first game. But another national championship, the window is still open. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more of our videos, including the remainder of this series, and we will see you in the next one.